Hi, and welcome to Series 2, Episode 4 of In Conversation with the CEO. Today, I'm joined by Suzie Smith, who heads up our community prevention and recovery service called Community Roots. So, welcome, Suzie.
Hello.
It's great to have you today. Why don't we start off with what is Community Roots? Let's explain that to our listeners. That'll be fantastic.
Of course, yeah. So Community Roots is a non-clinical service. So it's very much driven by the community. And it's peer-led, which basically means that it's people with lived experience of accessing health services that help us develop the service, so that people who come to us feel that there's somebody that truly understands. So people might come to us from a prevention perspective. So, that perhaps they've felt a bit stressed recently. They don't want to become unwell. They don't want their mental health to be impacted. And we can help teach them the tips and tricks that people have been using for many years to stay well. And we're also there from a recovery perspective. So say someone had accessed our services and was ready to continue their recovery journey after receiving, great care from us as a service. We're there to help them raise their confidence, instill some hope, and teach them how to self-manage their condition and realise that they're not on their own, that it's quite normal and quite common.
And how do people access, so thinking of that, so I suppose for recovery, we must signpost people to Community Roots, but for that prevention piece, that a person might never have been in contact with mental health services. So how would they find out about Community Roots? And I suppose, what are some of the courses? Because I know you've got a timetable there that's really jam-packed, which is brilliant. So just, I suppose, a bit about how would anybody find out about Community Roots, and what could they expect to see as part of that prevention?
Yeah, so we use all the usual routes for marketing the service. So, we have social media channels. We've got our website, which is part of the LSCFT website. But the team that I have working across Community Roots have been doing some really great work within communities. Wow. So in-reach within services, but also outreach into communities. So we work across a really wide range of partnerships. So the local library will know about us. You'll see our Harry vehicle pop up in supermarket car parks, and we'll talk to people about it. So it is very much a word of mouth service, especially for, like you say, people that haven't accessed our mental health services. But we've found that over the last 5 years, as the service has grown, that we're getting that fabulous feedback from people, and they'll tell a friend and bring a group along. And that's how we work, really.
It's really good. And in Lancashire and South Cumbria, we are really blessed to have a really diverse and multicultural communities.
Yeah.
But we know that accessing health services can be different for different cultures.
Yeah.
How do you overcome some of those barriers that might be there for people?
It sounds really tricky, doesn't it? But I think when we talk about outreach and when we talk about seldom heard communities or hard to reach communities, I don't believe that's true.
Right.
I think, reaching anyone, people want to be heard, people want to be listened to, and people want to give their opinion as to what would work for them and what wouldn't. I think the issue we face within the NHS more is around finding the time to be able to do that, because we are very overwhelmed services. And that's where I think myself and the team feel really lucky, because we do have the capacity and the time to do that. We can take that time to sit with you, have a cup of tea with you, and listen. And again, through our partnership work, we work with lots of local organisations, real grassroots organisations. So the volunteer and charity sector that are doing that on the ground relationship formation, we piggyback onto that and work closely with them.
Work together.
Yeah.
And on your timetable that you've got, just, give me an example of some of the courses that you run, and some of the ones that are really, I suppose, really liked by people that come along to community roots?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a real wide range
Yeah.
of curriculum.
From what to what? So what are the
Oh gosh, so from understanding
Okay.
and living well with
Okay.
a condition. So it could be something like understanding depression, through to understanding psychosis.
Yeah.
And that will be written side by side with people with lived experience of that
Okay.
diagnosis and the professionals that care for them. Right through to our cultural and arts programs. So at the moment, we've got a course about to start this week, in fact, around designing Deepdale, which is one of our sites.
Yeah.
And the classroom at the moment is just white walls. And we're going to our local community and saying, what do you want on the walls? Will you do it with us?
Yeah.
Um,
And we know there's a huge bit around mental health recovery through
Absolutely.
culture, through art, especially. So yeah.
Yeah, and we were dead lucky. We a couple of years ago now we received just over £90,000 in funding from the NHS Charities Together programme, and that's allowed us to work specifically with our communities around recovering from COVID. So there's been lots of work there across our staff
Yeah.
community, as well as our service user and our community, our general communities, to sort of say, how can you use services, access services, reintegrate within your community post-COVID? So we'll try anything once.
Okay.
And because everything's co-produced, we don't have like an explicit list that we have to stick to for
Yeah.
our courses.
They can evolve
We
as
can do anything. Yeah.
Wow.
If someone comes to us with a passion that something's helped them in their recovery or something helps them maintain their well-being, it's guaranteed to help somebody else as well.
Okay.
So
And
we'll work with them.
You mentioned Deepdale then, and then the Chai Centre, and obviously when I've been out and I've seen the garden and stuff, and so that seems to be really taking off now with gardening groups. And do you get a lot of demand for that as well? And
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the sites, so the site at Deepdale in Preston and the site in Burnley at the Chai Centre are very, very different. So Deepdale was our flagship site that we opened in April 2022.
With Preston North End.
And that's, it's next door to our Minerva Health Centre and housed within the Preston North End Stadium. So we opened that in the April. And in the September, we opened the Chai Centre, which was our building anyway, but had wandered away from its original path, should we say, because of COVID. Lots of those community services were shut. And we recognised the importance of reinvesting back in that site. So at the Chai Centre, they have the garden, the outdoor spaces. So we've been able to work in partnership with Lancashire Wildlife Trust and develop courses that those ladies in the community that are accessing that course, that programme, it's them that are designing the garden spaces. It's them that are using and growing and taking home from the garden spaces, rather than it being us telling people what they need. Yeah,
really,
absolutely.
really good. And your passion for community and I suppose the community leading and developing, it just shines through. So what made you want to come and work in mental health services, and what brought you to Lancashire and South Cumbria Foundation Trust?
So I've always worked in the NHS. So I've always worked in healthcare, and I've been really lucky to try a number of different roles across different services. And I was at Northwest Ambulance Service for 9 years, and my life changed massively during that time. I arrived as a young single girl, and then I got married and I had my children. But it was when I was pregnant with my children and returning to work afterwards that I struggled with my mental health myself. So I struggled with depression, and I had some postpartum psychosis with my first child, and it really impacted me. And I think going back to work for an urgent and emergency service, which is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, I thought it's not for me anymore in my family dynamic. So I made that choice for me. But then also, while I was unwell, I really struggled to access the services and the support that I needed.
So that we talked a lot about that lived experience. You had that, and maybe potentially couldn't find the services that now we would be providing to to the communities.
Absolutely. I mean, it was a fair few years ago now.
Yeah.
I know it doesn't appear so, but it was a fair few years ago that I was trying to access services, and wasn't necessarily getting the feedback and the care that I thought I needed at the time. So when I returned to work after my daughter, I thought, I want to go and work in mental health services because I don't want this to happen to anyone else. And as an NHS employee at that time for around a decade, I thought, well, if I can't navigate services, how would a member of the public? So I looked and actually went to work at Merseycare.
Okay. Yeah.
And returned to the learning and development team at the time. But while I was there, I networked with a few colleagues and found out that we were going to launch a recovery college was launched, but we were going to develop it into something really different. Okay. And that's when Merseycare developed their Life Rooms model.
Yeah, I've been over to see that. I mean, it's fantastic, isn't it?
Really is.
Really good model.
It is. And it is. It's fantastic. So in very quick succession, we had our flagship site, and then we opened further. There's one in Southport, one in Bootle, and then there's other partnership delivered services there. And I was there for a fair few years. Okay. Can't remember off the top of my head exactly how long. But it was done.
Yeah.
And it was working really well. It was award winning, and I thought, I'm ready for the next challenge. And just stumbled upon the fact that I knew that Lancashire Care at the time were developing a model with IMROC. And I thought that looks really interesting. Maybe that's the next challenge. And applied for the job, and the rest is history. I did. Yeah.
Wow. It's really good. So that bit through COVID, when we were delivering our it was Recovery College then, wasn't it? It's now Community Roots. And I suppose, actually, before I go on, I was going to ask about virtual versus in-house sessions. But before we get to that, just talk to us a bit about the name change, because our Community Roots, as we know it now, went through a real rebranding some time ago. So why the move from Recovery College to Community Roots, and how did you come up with the name? It would be
so. Yeah, I mean, when I arrived, it was already called the Recovery College. The national picture is that's what we sort of lump ourselves into. Many mental health services have a recovery college. But what we found is, in that first year of face-to-face delivery before COVID, lots of people were really confused by that name. Yeah. So there was an association that the word recovery meant just recovery from drugs and alcohol or gambling. So that sort of way that we use language. And then the word college was also off-putting to some people that might have accessed our service, because they thought they'd have to sit in a classroom very straight-backed and
traditional
take
image
assessments. Of which was so far from the truth. So we spoke at length. We have an advisory group which is open to everybody. Anyone that uses our service and anyone who just hears about it can come along and feed into that. And we'd had a number of conversations around, is this the right name? What would work better? And so then, working with our communications team, we decided that we would develop a name, but we weren't going to do it. We wanted our learners to do it. We wanted our
so that real co-production right from the name of the...
Absolutely, yeah. So we had our values. So we knew that we wanted to promote hope, connection, well-being, these sorts of things. So we put a public competition out. So we went to all internal and external stakeholders throughout Lancashire and said, we need a new name. It was around the time that we were opening the first site in Deepdale as well. So it seemed to marry up quite well. And we received, I think it was in excess of 50 entries.
Wow.
So everyone had the opportunity to put their thoughts forward. And then we had a group, an advisory group that met, went through all of those entries and got it down to 5. And then it went out for a simple poll across social media. And the winner was actually a gentleman who was part of our Youth Voices
Fantastic.
Group. And so, yeah, and there were prizes for, the top entries. So, and it's done really well since. We all slip back into the recovery college still because, old habits die hard.
Absolutely.
But I think it encompasses the service and the developments of the service since, because where we were just that learning element, the college element, we've now expanded much further beyond.
And that bit about roots, it is embedded within communities, isn't it? It's for the communities, in the communities, with the communities.
Absolutely.
I really like community roots. So what's your ambition for the service? Where do you see community roots going? Because, I think it's something we should invest in. It is, that we talk about our the quadruple aim around our trust strategy that we're just about to approve it in the trust board, and this is a real key part of that improving health. How what's your ambition for where are we going to see it going, Suzie? That'd be really exciting.
Well, the team do take the mickey sometimes, and they say, "Well, quite literally, we'd love to take over the world," but that's not quite possible. But no, I think I am really ambitious for the service, but I want us to grow, and I want us to be available across all parts of Lancashire and South Cumbria.
Yeah.
But I don't want to just plonk us down in areas. I want us to do some real research and involvement work and to really co-produce what those offers should look like in each of the remaining localities. So at the moment, we're not over in Fylde and we're not over in the Bay.
Yeah.
From an in-person perspective, we are available online. But I want to go and speak to those communities. I want to go and speak to my colleagues that work in those areas and find out, where would people like to access? Would they like it near one of our hospitals or our clinical sites, or would they prefer something that's more embedded within a real community area? Yeah. So yes, we'd like to expand. Yes, we want to grow and we want to be available, but we want to do it
with the community
gradually, and with that evidence base behind it, because I think within the NHS we're very good at delivering services, but sometimes we haven't quite thought about, well, where do those services need to be? Again, to go back to those seldom heard communities, or those communities that would never dream of accessing mental health services. So by rebranding to Community Roots, it softens it a little.
Yeah, totally. And the whole both the Deepdale and the Chai Centre, they don't feel clinical when you go in them, which is really important. I think, the Chai Centre, you walk in, there's the cafe, the same at the North End site. And I think that must make, once people are taking that first step to come in, that must be really calming environment and a non-clinical space.
We hope so, yeah. I mean, again, that the whole design, the colour scheme, the tree, our branded tree, the even down to the colour of the fixture and the fittings. It wasn't us, it was our advisory group, our service users, our learners that developed that. They even went to the furniture factory and picked out what's the comfiest seat. So we really do have a wonderful opportunity to be able to take it right back to exactly what tell me what you now want, tell me what you need. And my job is just to facilitate that conversation and to make sure that people will, feel heard. Yeah.
Brilliant. So if I'm listening to you now and I'm at home and I think I want to find out a bit more, how should somebody go about that? Is it on our Trust website? I think you mentioned at the beginning, go on there and there's the contact details for you and the team.
There is, yeah. So the simplest way is, if you're online, just go to your search engine and put Community Roots, LSCFT will be the first thing that pops up. And our website is there, but if you have any difficulty with accessing us online, I would encourage you, if you're local, to pop into either of our sites in Burnley and Preston, or just give us a call. It's a really friendly team, and we're just happy to hear from people and to help people navigate the curriculum and what's available.
That's brilliant. Well, thank you so much for coming in for a chat today, Suzie. It has been brilliant, and you are as passionate as ever about this service, so it's really, really good. So just a massive thank you from me. I hope that people have found today's session really informative. And as Suzie said, if you want any extra information, she's told you the best way to go about that. So thank you. Take care.